I see something. She was a lot of fun, this book. Is it?
Jimmy Ham, was that last week in Albuquerque? First time we've seen him in over a couple of years at least.
This thing doesn't like the light up in front.
But I will start start and go through the various groups now. Now the parade is being led off, as I said, this year we have the supreme champion of the show, but we have a beef champion and a dairy champion, and because the beef comes first in the catalogue, the beef champion is leading off the parade. Now this year the beef champion is a 5-year-old Hereford bull, which is jointly owned by Mr. J.W. Williamson and Sons at Cradle Hall and Collarball Farms at Laird. This bull was purchased in January as a stock bull for these two units, and they were really looking for Highland animal from Mr. Michael Gibson, Eaglevale at Dallas. This is a 9-year-old cow, Princess the 14th of Lees. The dam, it was bred at Lees Castle, the dam being Princess of the 12th of Lees and the sire Cornel Isla. It was bought as a heifer and has really improved as years have gone on, and was actually breed champion at the Highland Show at Ingolston this year in 1982. It was also breed champion here at Nairn in 1976. And after a couple of years of Mr. Walker of Lees Castle taking the Highland Championship, it's nice to see it going around and going to Mr. Gibson. The reserve of the Highland cattle comes from Mr. Walker Lees Castle in Inverness, and it's a 9-year-old bull, Hamish of Achna Craig, which was bred in Mull. He's had it for 4 years, and it was male champion at the Highland 2 years ago, and was reserve breed champion at the Highland, and is one of the stock bulls at Lees Castle. The third animal going round is also from Mr. Walker Lees Castle, and is a 15-month-old bull, which was bred by Lord Lovett at Balblair and was recently purchased as a weaned calf for the Lees Castle herd. We now move on to the next breed, which again is one of our traditional Scottish breeds, the Aberdeen Angus cattle, which have been so famous the world over for their improvement of native breeds in all parts of the world, and their ability to produce real quality mutton, real quality beef, and we're again a very big show of the Aberdeen Angus here today. We're being led off by the champion from Mr. Rind at A.J. Rind and Sons at Newton of Struthers, and this animal was also the reserve beef champion of the show here today. It is a 4-year-old bull, Woodview Benjamin, and was actually the joint champion here at Nairn last year in the overall stock parade. Its sire is Jane Rufus, and the dam is Barness Bavina of Tulabert, and was first prize 2-year-old at Turriff, and was also second in the Highland Show as a yearling, and was first in Perth when he was bought. This bull has been the stock bull for Mr. Ryan for some time, but he is now intending to sell him as he's coming back on his own stock. So if we have anybody interested in buying a very first-class specimen of an Aberdeen Angus bull, then I suggest to get in touch with Mr. Ryan. The reserve champion of the Aberdeen Angus comes from Mr. W. Miller, 55 Wards Road, Eldon, and is a 7-year-old cow which was bought in from Canada. Her name is Babishville Maid of Edenbrook, and was first in her Hereford was also the champion beef animal of the show and is not leading the Herefords but leading the parade. So the animal which is actually leading the Herefords round is the reserve champion, which also comes from Mr. J.G. Williamson of Cradle Hall and was the senior heifer champion in the breed. This is a homebred animal and its name is Rosario 1 Clara. Its dam was Knox Hill 1 Clara and the sire was Lowesmore 1 Lone Ranger. It was champion at Nairn 3 years ago, but has not been shown before this year. Sorry, I should say this animal has never been shown before. But unfortunately, as I was explaining to you earlier, it is very, very difficult indeed to get purebred animals trained to go around in the halter, and for crossbred calves, it is just really impossible. And unfortunately, we cannot lead these animals round in the ring as they're not trained to the halter. But I should say at this stage that there is a very, very good turnout of cross cattle here at the show today, and the champion in the cross cattle section was a cross Limousin Stott, which was born in February and produced by Murray Estates at their Coney farm at Rafford. It was out of a cross Aberdeen Angus cow, which was her third calf, and was, the sire, as I've said, was a Limousin bull. Murray Estates have been actually reserve champion in the breed cattle last year and champion the year before, and they've now retained it back as champion this year. The reserve champion in the cross cattle section, which again unfortunately cannot be paraded, comes from Mr. William Lane, Lower Gate, Granton, who actually had the champion here last year at Nairn, and this is a 9-month-old heifer cross Charlotte calf out of a 10-year-old blue-grey cow. And it was actually out of the same cow which bred the Nairn champion last year, but a different AI bull. So this must be a very good cow indeed that Mr. Lane has. It can produce 2 calves of this quality to 2 different bulls in 2 consecutive years. We now move on to the dairy animals, and we start with the Friesians, but as I said earlier, the supreme dairy champion at the show was a Friesian from Mr. G. Phillip, and the Friesians are being led round by the reserve champion, which comes from Mr. H.B. Innes and Sons at Merrifield Old Ern. This is a 6-year-old dry cow called Bell Pheasant 100. Its sire was Bell Napoleon, and the dam was Bell Pheasant the 63rd. Because it's last won this cup in 1975, and since then it's been with Mr. Walker of Lee's Castle, so he's now got it back in 1982. I think it's a tremendous achievement that Mr. Gibson was actually champion in the Highland this year as well. We now move on to the Aberdeen Angus cattle section, and we have the Silver Cup by the late Earl of Leven and Melville for the best Aberdeen Angus cow and calf, with her own supple calf. And this year it goes to Mr. W. Miller, Wards Road, Elgin. It's the first time Mr. Miller has won this cup, according to my record. We now move on to the Silver Rose Bowl, presented by Mrs. Brodie of Lethen for the champion Aberdeen Angus, and this goes to Mr. A.J. Rhines, Newton of Struthers, at Skinloss. Mr. Rhines been a very faithful competitor, and it's gone the rounds, and it's now back to Mr. Clark. We have the Silver Challenge Cup for the best crossbred calf bred in Nairnshire, and this year this goes to Codder Estates. This is the first time that they have taken the cup as far as my records go. So, a representative for Codder Estates, please. We seem to have lost our president for a minute. Walker of Geddes for the best crossbred animal bred by an exhibitor. year it goes to Murray Estates, who won it 2 years ago, but last year lost it to Mr. Colin McCullough. Inverness. Again, I don't see any record of Mr. Philip having won this before, so again it's nice to see the cups going right. I think if you just stay there, Mr. Philip, you also get the Eric Geddes Trophy for 3 females bred by an exhibitor. Cup for the best Friesian in milk or in calf heifer, and this goes to Mr. A.J. Monroe and Sons, Kirkhill, Inverness. We now move on to the Holsteins, and we have the cup for the champion Holstein presented by H.D. Sloan for Cemix, and for the 4th year running, this goes to Alistair Sutherland, Bankhead at Brodie. You stay there, Alistair. You also get a plaque for the best udder. We now move on to the competition which I was speaking to earlier, the Junior Showmanship Competition and Cup, and the winner is Mr. Anderson Jr. from Maine at Elgin. Now, if you just stay there, Mr. Pendrick, you also get a BSCM so-called tankard to keep, which is linked with this last cup. We now move on to the Patrons Cup for the Supreme Champion in the dairy section, and this goes to Mr. G. Philip Castle Stewart Inverness. By the late Brigadier J.E. Sterling, DSO, for the member gaining the most points in the dairy section, and this goes to Mr. Alistair Sutherland, Bankhead at Brodie. Nairn for the supreme animal in the dairy section, and this also goes to Mr. G. Philip Castle Stewart. He's getting a bit overladen now, I think, with all these cups. We now leave the cattle and move on to the sheep, and we start with the black-faced sheep, and we have the Grand Cup for the best pen of 3 sheep in section 14.
Smile, you're on TV, gal.
We're always doing that. Please some. What's this we're speaking about? Finished it. I didn't know. His films that cyclical.
Well, George said he thought it was a nice how he thought, one of the hadn't seen them together.